everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well. So today I'm going to be doing the second part of my May wrap up because in May I read 20 books. That's because I had a week of annual leave. It's not because I'm some crazy quick reader. I had a lot of free time to be able to do reading. So we'll jump straight in because I have a lot to talk to you about. I've got myself a cup of coffee because actually a lot of these books, I'm just going to have to put a picture here for you because they were either ebooks or audiobooks. So we'll jump straight in at my lowest star rating. That goes to The Crown of Gilded Bones by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the third book in the From Blood and Ash series. I am so disappointed with this book. Did I say I gave it 2 stars? The first 10% of this book was okay. The last 10% of this book was okay. The 80% in the middle was just filler and so infuriating to read. Jennifer L. Armentrout has a very repetitive way of writing. She drums up the same lines over and over and over again. And by this point in the series, you know, I've read 3 600-page books. These things are getting a little bit annoying to read. And for some reason, I really don't know why this has happened, but my feeling towards the two main characters, the two characters that are kind of in love with each other, has really done like a complete flip. Like, I was so into them in that second book, but in this one, they are so incredibly annoying. The way they talk to each other, the way they interact with each other, it just grated me the entire time. The whole book just felt like we weren't actually even getting anywhere. Really disappointed, and I'm hoping that this isn't going to be the case for the next few books. So if we have another 3 600-page books in this series and all of them are pretty much filler, I think I might just cut my losses and go. The next book I want to talk about I gave 2.5 stars to, and that was Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar. So this basically follows the story of Felix, who is trans and in school. He's 17 years old. He's experiencing some kind of trolls that are just not being very nice towards him in terms of his gender identity and how he puts himself out into the world and things like that. Now, what I really loved about this book was the exploration into gender identity. There were some really interesting conversations that Felix was having. The people, the groups that he was spending time with were very diverse. It was just really good on that point. And I just wish that the characters and the remainder of the plot actually backed up how good that plot element was. The main character Felix was the one that I had the most issue with. I found him to be a very dislikable character, and for someone who is going through a lot of struggles to do with their identity and all of that kind of stuff, like, I would have thought that I would have had some sympathy for him. He was a very self-centered character. Everything came round to him all of the time. Even when other characters that were very close to him were struggling or needing support with something, he somehow made it all about him. The way that he treated his friends, and more specifically his own father, just seems so mean. Like, I just couldn't get over how horrible he was being. Like, his dad was quite clearly trying to be accepting and to learn about his son. Like, he was constantly trying to get him to spend more time at the house with him so that he could like talk to him and stuff, but he was just immediately like, oh no, my dad won't accept me, he dead names me all the time and he won't accept my new like identity. And it's like, hold a second, your dad has paid for all your surgeries, has taken you to all the appointments. Like, give him a little bit of a break, you know? He's not being malicious towards you. He's not actively seeking to upset you. But like, there was no thought process in Felix to have conversations with people, you know? Like, if his dad is calling him by the wrong name, he didn't say to him, hey dad, like, can you call me by the name that I like identify with? He just immediately in his own head was like, oh, my dad is not accepting of me, I'm gonna storm out and then like not come home for a few days, you know? Like, it baffled me. If you want to hear me talk more about this one, I did kind of go more in depth into my thoughts in my Do the Thing-a-thong vlog, so I'll leave that one link around here if you want to go and see that. Next up we have a 3-star book, and that goes to The Age of Miracles by Karen Thompson Walker. Again, I talked about this one in my recent vlog, so you can go and see like deeper thoughts there if you want to. Essentially, this is a apocalyptic type book where the world is slowing down. So the days are getting longer, the nights are getting longer, basically it gets to the point where like days are 60 hours long with sunlight for 60 hours, and then it will be dark for 60 hours. And so what I really liked about this book was the exploration into what could happen to the planet, the people, the animals, the crops, all of that kind of stuff, like if this were actually to happen. The reason why I gave this one 3 stars was because I just didn't feel a connection to the main character at all. We read through the eyes of a young girl. She's kind of going through puberty. She's trying to struggle with, you know, becoming a young woman at the same time as all of this kind of apocalyptic stuff going down. I felt quite detached from it. I think that's all I can say on that one. Next with the 3 stars is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. I read this on ebook. This one I enjoyed. Again, 3 stars is just in a book that I enjoyed but didn't love. Basically, we follow our main character who is obsessed with a like online podcast that gets broadcast onto YouTube, and she then discovers that she actually lives across the road from the boy that produces this podcast, and they build a friendship. A lot of the book is centered around the decisions that you have to make when you're around 16, 17 years old, when you're having to choose your GCSEs and do all of these exams that are going to lead you to university and then the job and your career and all that kind of thing. It's that idea of knowing what the heck you need to do with your life, and that is what the main characters in this book are exploring. The only reason I gave this one slightly lower was because I felt like it dragged in the middle. Like there was a whole kind of section of probably about 150 pages where it didn't really feel like the plot was actually going anywhere, and so that just felt like it dragged a little bit for me. The next book that I'm going to talk about, also 3 stars, is Nick and Charlie. I listened to this one on audiobook. This is like a novella connected to like the Heartstopper books, which are graphic novels focusing on 2 main characters, Nick and Charlie. They're both in school, kind of teenage love. It's very sweet, very cute. Those Heartstopper books are fantastic. This one was okay. It was a novella. I think, to be fair, I'm not very good at like shorter stories. I much prefer being able to like completely dive into a book, and so this one just didn't blow me out of the water. It was okay. I am very much looking forward to reading some more from Alice Oseman in the future though, because I think she might become one of those favourite people that you just know that you can get like a nice story from them. As for the 3-star reads, I have Bitter Orange by Claire Fuller. This book was just okay. It wasn't anything special. We basically follow a 40-something-year-old woman who's basically cared for her mother for a really long time, and her mother's just died, and so she's accepted this job to go and look at this very old house that has this old bridge, and she is like a bridge expert or likes writing about bridges, so someone has like found her, and so she's moved for a summer into this old kind of dilapidated manor house in the countryside, and she is then looking at this bridge. But also at this house are a couple who are quite enigmatic, quite a lot about them, and she becomes very drawn to them, and they kind of take her for meals and they go out like doing nice things together, and but the more she spends time with them, the more she kind of thinks there's something not quite right there. The thing that makes this book quite interesting is the fact that you switch between that period in time actually into the future when she's like in her 60s or something, and she's clearly very unwell, very old, and kind of not like coping very well, and potentially is going to be dying soon, and a priest is speaking to her. It seems like she is wanting to make some kind of confession. So yeah, it was just a good read, nothing amazing, but definitely one that I think a lot of people would probably enjoy. Moving swiftly on to my 4-star reads, the first one I have here is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. Really enjoyed this book. So we basically follow the story of a lady named Janie. We join her when she's a young girl, and then we go through her life right up until her old age. It's set in the early 1900s in Southern America. Janie is a black woman living in a black community. There's just so much to it. Obviously, with it being set in the time frame that it is, and also centering around a black community, there's a lot to do with racism there, a lot to do with class. At one point, Janie marries a much kind of wealthier man, and he is kind of brings her up to a higher level with him, and there's a lot of kind of discussion on like where she is, her standing in the world, and where she's come from. There's also a really incredible kind of feminist drive in this book. Janie is an incredible woman. She goes through so many horrendous things in her life, yet powers on all the way through. The strength strength that comes through in her as a character is just incredible. I highly recommend this one. Definitely the audiobook is a real treat. Next up for the 4 stars we have The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Now I really enjoyed this book, and it's definitely a lot different to most fantasy that I've read before, which I really appreciated. So this is a fantasy book, however it pulls its inspiration from Chinese and Japanese culture, history, like actual events that kind of happened during World War II between China and Japan. And so that's the kind of setting that we're looking at. There's lots of talks of deities and gods and different kind of powers that they can draw from the earth and from the spirits. I really enjoyed those aspects of the book. It was really interesting. So basically we start with our main character Rin when she is a young girl, and has trained and studied in order to be able to pass a test which will gain her access to an elite school wherein she will be taught by the masters of the realm in various things, including kind of battles and things like that, in the hopes that she can then join the military of the land where she lives. There is a lot of battle and strategy and war talk in this book. You don't really have the reprieve of any kind of romance storyline or anything sidelining the main plot of battle, and so I don't know if this book would be for everybody. One of the other reasons I didn't give it 5 stars was the actual pacing and the timeline of Rin and her life. I feel like sometimes years would go by in the space of like a short paragraph, and then suddenly she was a lot older, and that was quite jarring sometimes to suddenly like try and get my head around like how old she suddenly was and what was going on and where she was. I'm really looking forward to reading in the next one. I'm thinking it's just going to get better from here, because now I get it. Now I understand the magic system, the kind of cultural system and everything that's going on, and the 2 sides of this war and the various names that they have and all that kind of stuff. I think I'm getting my head around it. I do think I'll enjoy the next 2 books even more. So now we have the final 3 books in this video, and they are all 5-star reads. The first one I want to talk about is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read this one as an ebook, really enjoyed it. I think Taylor Jenkins Reid writes incredible characters. So essentially in this book we follow Daisy Jones and a band known as The Six, who come together to form one whole band, and the book is told as if the author has like had an interview with the band members, Daisy Jones, and various people that were kind of peripheral to the band as they kind of rose into fame. Now, when I first started reading it, I thought it was real. I honestly thought that Daisy Jones and the Six were real people and the band was real, and because it really reads very realistically when you first start it. There's even a note from the author at the front saying like all of the information in this book was taken from interviews and all of this kind of stuff. And then when I googled Daisy Jones and the Six, like it just came up with this book, so it's clearly fictional but very cleverly done. So yeah, like I said, it reads like an interview, and we follow a cast of characters and learn about their lives and how they all came together, how they're all torn apart. It really deep dives into the idea of fame. It looks into kind of the drug culture of the kind of period of time between like the 60s and the 80s, and how that kind of fell around groups like this, like rock and roll bands. Like it was just almost seen as a par of course, like you had to be taking drugs. Alcoholism was a huge problem for bands like this, and you see that and in the ups and downs of the band and the various members that are part of the band. It's just beautifully done. Daisy Jones was without a doubt my favourite character in this book. She was written incredibly, and so yeah, really enjoyed that one. Absolutely would recommend to you all. Next book I want to talk about is Kim Jiyong, born 1982 by Chu Nam Ju. So this book is told in 3rd person, and we basically learn about the life of Kim Jiyong through the eyes of her psychiatrist who she is visiting, and he relays the story of her life to us. At the very beginning of the book, we learn that she has recently had a baby, and since having that baby, she is clearly struggling with some kind of postpartum depression or some postpartum psychosis. She's talking as if she's not herself. She's speaking as if she's other people and putting on different personas. And so her husband takes her to the psychiatrist, and this is then how the story is relayed to us. And we go right back to her kind of mother, her grandmother, and we learn how they were brought up, and then how she lives her life growing up I didn't mention it's set in Korea. This is actually translated from Korea. We are shown very clearly the patriarchal society that she is living within, the misogyny that is rife in every aspect of her life, of her grandmother and her mother's life. And bit by bit, as we see more of her life and the things that she's had to struggle with just through being a woman, you piece together this image of her and you can completely understand why this poor woman has got to the point where she's now visiting a psychiatrist because of the mental strife she has experienced all throughout her life. Being a woman reading this book, although I'm not Korean, I've not lived in Korea, there are definitely certain aspects of the story that you can draw parallels to in your own life wherever you live. I'm absolutely sure of that. It's one of those ones that you just think like, oh, I want to push this into everyone's hands, because it was really, really good. So would definitely recommend the audiobook as well. 5 stars. And the final book that I'm going to very quickly talk about is my reread for the month, and that is The Host by Stephanie Meyer. This is essentially a sci-fi novel. The world has been occupied by an alien race and they are using human bodies as hosts for their race of aliens, and so these kind of alien beings attach themselves into the humans and they eradicate the human mind. Now our main character Melanie, she's had one of these aliens put inside her, but she is putting up a fight, and so inside this one body they have the mind of the alien and the mind of Melanie, who are at odds with each other. It's a story about humanity, about love, about what it means to be a human, the best and worst bits about humanity, and just appreciating life. It blows me out of the water every single time. Honestly, I can happily say that this is one of my favourite books ever. And if you've been put off reading this book because it's written by Stephanie Meyer, please try and put that out of your mind and read this book, because honestly, it's like it's written by a different author. There is not even a shade of Twilight in this book. It's just, I don't understand how she could have written Twilight and then come and written this book. It's brilliant. I would highly recommend. So there we are. Those are all the books that I read in the second part of May. Do let me know down below if you've read any of these. What have you been reading recently? Come and talk to me. As always, I will leave links to everything I've mentioned today down below. I hope you're all having a lovely day and I will see you soon. Bye.